WrestleMania V, the show where the mega powers explode. Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to another edition of the WrestleMania reviews. I am here with WrestleMania 5. I'm recording this right before the Super Bowl comes out, so I will be uploading this, I believe, Monday morning, and then I hope to get WrestleMania 6 and so on and so forth. But we're going to talk about WrestleMania 5. Man, I was almost gonna give up after watching this show. It wasn't a bad show, but it was definitely the weakest show that I've watched up to this point, not counting WrestleMania 2, which was awful. Um, but the countouts, the DQ finishes, it's gotta stop. I know it gets worse from here, but man, I really wish that they stopped that and they just focus on giving us good matches and give some more matches some more lengthy time. Out of all the shows, they do have celebrities on this show, but they don't take up a lot of the time. If anything, the most we got is a performance from Run DMC and well, Piper's Pit, which we'll get to when we get to. But even America the Beautiful was performed by the women's champion Rockin' Robin because they had nothing for the women's division. Because around this time, the 80s, 90s, let's be honest, they care less about wrestling, more in particularly the women's wrestling side of things. So, and Rockin' Robin was not it. She is not a good singer. Even Jesse the Body Ventura said that she was awful. So it just shows you they will never get a person like that to sing America the Beautiful. Hercules defeated King Haku in the very first match. Now, this was the first actual good Hercules match I watched. Not a great match, but definitely going to go down as the best match of Hercules' career. The only downfall of this is that Hercules won. King Haku deserved to win. King Haku should have won this match. And if it wasn't going to be King Haku, why didn't you just put him with somebody with more build? They really try to push Hercules to be this top level star, and he just never amounted to that. It just, sorry, he was just too corny and cartoonish. Never going to happen. Twin Towers defeated the Rockers. This is just a little bit depressing because there is another tag team on this show that should have been the one to get um, this spot. And if the Twin Towers were going to be built like monsters, they should have fought lesser than tag team. The Rockers were red hot around this time. They actually had an entrance, so it just shows you that um, they didn't see a lot of potential in the Rockers, which sucks given the outcome of what one of those superstars ends up doing. But for what they did, it was fine. But I really wish that the Rockers would have done something else. Not necessarily being the tag team title match, but yeah, they could have done something better. Ted DiBiase versus Brutus the Barber Beefcake. Now, this was a match that I was excited for because I'm like, what does Ted DiBiase do after main eventing WrestleMania 4? Well, you put him against Brutus the Barber Beefcake, and from the story that I got, it seemed to be pretty good. Um, just basically Ted DiBiase wanting to showcase his $1 million championship, which he never puts on the line. It should have been on the line here. And then if Brutus the Barber Beefcake was going to win, he could have been the victor here. By the way, Trump was at this show because it was at the Audrey Plaza. And then there's a part where Ted DiBiase and Trump shake hands. There's a part where he gets interviewed, but who cares about that? Anyways, this match was actually pretty good up until the finish. Double counted. Are you serious? I hated the finish. If it wasn't for that finish, I would have uh, personally respected the match a little bit more. The double count out is just what took me out of it. I'm just like, great. So I basically wasted my time. It did make sense for both men to be brawling and then it ends in the double count out. But if they were going to ever do this, it should have been Hogan and Andre last year. Then it would have definitely explained why both men never made it to the semifinals and the quarterfinals of that tournament last year. Next match, the Fabulous Rogue Jews. I will never know how to pronounce those names, but anyways, they lose to the Bushwhackers. The Bushwhackers they are not meant to be a serious tag team, and deep down they both knew it. If anything, I would have done the Twin Towers fight the Bushwhackers, and then they get squashed, and then I would have done Rockers and the Fabulous Rogues around this time. That would have made way more sense, but they didn't do that, unfortunately. Um, I did not really like this match personally. It had to do with the fact that the Bushwhackers won a match, and I don't know, the Bushwhackers just look like guys that are meant to lose. They're not really meant to be taken serious. But anyways, this is definitely my least favorite match of the show so far. Mr. Perfect defeated the Blue Blazer. This was a solid match. It didn't need to go more than 5 minutes. I think it did its job of making Mr. Perfect look strong against the Blue Blazer. And a lot of people are disappointed that this match didn't go 10, 15 minutes. Now, if this was Mr. Perfect versus Owen Hart, yes, this match, give it time, give it like all the time in the world that you can. That's when you do a match this long. This next match, while I wasn't a big fan of the wrestling, I was a big fan of the story, and definitely the commentary helped a lot in making this match feel important. But it was Demolition versus the Powers of Pain and Mr. Fuji in a 3-on-2 handicap match for the WWF Tag Team Championships. I like the story of how Mr. Fuji basically betrayed Demolition to join the Powers of Pain, and he was gonna give them the shot at the belts, and eventually it crumbled on them. So, and this was the around the time where Demolition were the longest reigning tag team champions of all time. So I really enjoyed this one. For the storytelling, the Powers of Pain were never good. They were the definition of LOD ripoffs. People say Demolition is a LOD ripoff. Powers of Pain are much worse as far as like how obvious they are as a ripoff. But anyways, I enjoyed this match. It was very entertaining, and I can't fault it. Demolition, one of the greatest tag teams of all time. Dino Bravo versus Ronnie Garvin. I Again, another Dino Bravo match. They clearly had a boner for this guy. Don't care about this match. Moving on. The Brainbusters, Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard defeated Strikeforce. Now, this was one of my favorite matches of the night. Basically, this is the match where Rick Martel turns on Tito Santana. It started off as a good tag team match, and then Rick Martel decides to leave Tito Santana, and then they go on to singles run, both men, and Tito, Tito Santana was already established at this point. It's time for Rick Martel to get that rub, so I really enjoyed this for that. And yeah, and I'm a big fan of the Brainbusters. So I can't really fault it for that. So, enjoyable conclusion and enjoyable match. So made the Brainbusters look strong, but at the same time made Tito and Rick Martel look strong because Rick Martel went on to move on to be a single star, and Tito Santana was already established. So good job on this one. I forgot where in the show that this took place, but I'll just talk about it now. Piper's Pit with Morton Downey Jr. I don't know who Morton Downey Jr. is. A lot of you are massive fans of him. Brother Love basically teases, pretends to be Roddy Piper, and tries to ruin the show until Roddy Piper comes, beats up Brother Love, and then gives the fire extinguisher to Morton Downey Jr. An enjoyable segment. I would have cared about it more if I knew who Morton Downey Jr. was. I know, like I said, clearly a fan favorite for people, especially for his cockiness. So I'll give it props for that. But moving on to the wrestling. Jake Roberts beating Andre the Giant by DQ with special guest referee Big John Studd. Basically, this is the infamous match where Andre the Giant gets his arm stuck on the ropes, and then Jake Roberts brings in Damien, bites Andre, and then because Big John Studd is the ref, he was gonna DQ Jake, but then he got scared of getting bit, so then they switched the results, and Jake the Snake Roberts beat Andre by DQ. And even the commentary was like, why did he get DQ'd? Personally, I would have not had Big John Studd as the ref. Instead, I would have done Jake and Andre. People are like, how is Andre gonna, or how is Jake gonna beat Andre? And then he's could be like, oh, I don't care about the victory. Bite. So it should have really been Andre winning by DQ, not Jake. This is one of the few DQ finishes that could have worked had the outcome was different, but it's what it was. The Hart Foundation beating Rhythm and Blues, Greg Valentine, and the Honky Tonk Man. Enjoyable match. Honestly, these 80s WrestleManias get saved by the Hart Foundation for the most part, so kudos for that. Again, enjoyable match, and it really shows you that they didn't know what to do with the Honky Tonk Man after he lost the Intercontinental Championship. Now we move on to a match that I have mixed opinions on because while I think it was a good match, I don't think it was a great match. Ultimate Warrior versus Rick Rude. Now, I know that is a very hot take. I really enjoyed the finish, which is what everybody knows it for. And I think these guys showed that they have amazing chemistry in this ring and they have amazing characters. For me, I always thought that they had way much better matches down the road. This was a good match. Um, I don't think it was good enough to be on the showcase mode of 2K24. Um, but I do enjoy the match. I don't want people to think that I hate this match. Um, Again, it's really famous for the ending, which is Bobby the Brain Heenan pulling Ultimate Warrior, who has Rick Rude on top, and then 1, 2, 3, Rick Rude steals it because Bobby the Brain Heenan keeps holding Warrior. Honestly, if I'm being honest, Bobby the Brain Heenan was the star of this entire show. Like from being on the corner of the Brainbusters when Rick Martel turns on Tito, him being with Haku, and then much later, even though he was in a god awful match later on the show, um, Bobby Heenan was a star of WrestleMania 5. Rick Rude showcased that he is very entertaining. The fact that he had like the icy belt on his leggings as well as the Warrior's face, it just showed what a cool character he was. And the Ultimate Warrior was already this massive. Basically, everybody thought he was going to be the next Hogan at one point. So I really enjoyed this match. I can't fault it. I love it. Good match. Bad News Brown versus Jim Duggan. Um, Dud of a match. Double DQ. I don't care. If they didn't care about this match, why did they even have it? I don't care about this match. So, and it's kind of sad because Bad News Brown was a solid heel. Last year he won a Battle Royal, which I care less about. And then Jim Duggan, who at one point was a Royal Rumble winner, the first Royal Rumble winner. Obviously, they didn't know what to do with that concept just yet. But very sad that Jim Duggan really didn't amount to much outside of that one accomplishment. Red Rooster beats Bobby the Brain Heenan in 30 seconds, and then afterwards, Bobby the Brain Heenan runs away with the Brooklyn Brawler. I don't care about this match. Red Rooster is just such a sad gimmick. This goofball with pointy things up his head, and then Bobby the Brain Heenan. I think this would have worked if it was a wrestler that I cared about, maybe. But regardless, it made sense for whoever the fight Bobby Heenan, that person would lose, and it would make sense for a Bobby the Brain Heenan match to be 30 seconds. But man, Red Rooster did not deserve this spot. If anything, give it to Dino Bravo. Why not? But then we move on to the main event. Macho Man Randy Savage versus Hulk Hogan, and this story was beautifully put together. Last year, Randy Savage won the tournament, but Hogan was always standing next to him. He was always the one on the spotlight. Randy Savage was jealous, and he was also jealous of the fact that Miss Elizabeth was always on Hogan's side. But then it showed that Miss Elizabeth didn't really care about Savage. It was just a well told story, and they culminate here. Two best friends who fight it off here at WrestleMania, the main event of WrestleMania. And this was a good match. I really enjoyed it. I like that Ms. Elizabeth was not in any corner. She had her own entrance. That shows. That was pretty cool. That Ms. Elizabeth was a separate entrance. She wasn't on nobody's corner. She just watched along. And then at the end, Hulk Hogan beats Randy Savage, becomes a WWF champion yet again. And a lot of people would say that people got tired of Hulk Hogan. They do. But this end result made sense for Randy Savage to beat everybody, only for the top face of the company to beat him. So I can't really fault it for that. So overall, I think this was the best match of the show. There was some good things in this show for the most part, but it does hurt all these DQ finishes, all these count out victories. I really wish they structured this a lot better and maybe given some other matches more time. I think if Warrior and Rude was longer, I would have probably said that was the match of the night. Um, but regardless, overall, it was a solid show. I wouldn't go back and watch it if I'm being honest. So that's why I'm gonna give it a C plus. This show wasn't for me. I would really only watch Hogan Savage and maybe Warrior Rude. But overall, like I said, some other cool things that helped it. Again, I was a big fan of the Rick Martel turning heels moment. Um, I'm a big fan of Run DMC, so good that they were here. But this is not a show that I would run back and go see. Outside of the main event, really, if I'm being honest. But yeah, that's what I think about it. We're gonna move on to the next 35 WrestleManias to go. Until then, take care, everybody.